Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on 10 body language mistakes that people often make when presenting. So this is from a public speaking presentation skills perspective, and some of these mistakes obviously transfer to everyday life. So my aim is that you will take away two or three ideas from this webinar that you can then use in your own life, in your own presentation skills, your own unique presentation style. This webinar is adapted from an article that I read in the Age newspaper some years ago now, but still really relevant in terms of what I'm seeing other presenters and our politicians do. So Peter Dew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is helping you unlock your hidden potential through the spoken word. So you can share your message, your knowledge, your experience with those audiences, with your clients that need to hear what you've got to say. Participation, really quite simple. Ask questions as we go, take notes, write comments, and that way I can apply or respond to the comments when there's two or three at the same time. Most importantly, I want you to reflect on a previous presentation or think forward to another presentation you've got coming up. Anything you can do differently, anything you can incorporate from today that'll just take your presentation one notch up. It's about incremental improvement. What can you do from today that'll help you in your next presentation? So what are the tips I'm going to talk about, all those common mistakes? The first one is poor posture. The second one is not being in sync or synchronized with your audience. The other one is fidgeting, hand movements. I'll talk about that more. Giving no physical feedback or facial expressions. That's the deadpan speaker. No eye contact with your audience. The handshake. Mismatched verbal and non-verbal messages. So you're speaking beautifully, but your body language is just not congruent. The lack of smile. The eye rolling and crossing arms defensively. These are 10 mistakes that were highlighted in that Age article, and I'm going to apply them to presentation skills, public speaking skills. Please ask questions as we go. First one is posture. Posture is so important. And I talk to people about the position of excellence. So when you get on stage, it's standing upright. If you were coaching someone, a friend who is doing a presentation, what would you tell them to do? And they would be standing upright, shoulders up. They would be breathing from deep down, not this shallow, panting breathing. And they'd be doing everything that made them look confident. You've probably heard of Amy Cuddy and her famous TED Talk. She talks about presence and how your body language and the power posing can help you look confident, even if you're a little bit nervous. I see slouching. I see leaning on tables, elbows on tables. As soon as you put your elbows on tables, you crouch up a little bit and it compacts your respiratory system, lessening your effectiveness of breathing. So elbows on tables should be off. Leaning on lecterns. This gentleman here in the middle, he's doing what we call lectern lean. And sometimes people hang on to the lectern so tight that you get that associated white knuckle fever when you squeeze it so tight that the knuckles go white. Once again, stand upright, nice and confident, a neutral body language. Don't do fig leaves, which is passive. Don't do hands on hips, which is aggressive. It's about a good neutral posture. Avoid poor posture. Look at yourself in the mirror if you're unsure. Just a couple of examples of poor posture. Sitting back in the chair is not the best. The best thing, peak performance, is in the front 2/3. My back is not touching my chair. This is where a violinist or a cello player will sit, or a flamenco guitarist. They sit on the front 2/3 of the chair, leaving the back third free, and their back is not touching the chair. Quite comfortable to lie back, but straight away my physiology's changed. Enough on poor posture. Not being in sync. I call it the dance of communication. So it's a roundabout. You're really not interested. You're just there going through the motion. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. And cool. I'm really excited. And yeah, I think I've got some good information with you. Maybe not. Who knows? Anyhow, so I'm just not synchronized with the people in the room. I'm not serving you. And even via the webinar, I still need to do the dance of communication. I don't have anything better to do. I'm focused on what I'm doing now. I'm sharing my knowledge as best I can. There will be some questions that I can't answer. I'm not going to make up the answer. I might find out. In fact, I will try and find out, and I'll get back to you. So make sure when you're presenting that you are in the zone, you're synchronized with your audience, you want to be there, you're excited, and there's nothing you'd rather be doing than speaking to that audience right now. Whoops, too far. Fidgeting and big hand movements. So the fidgeting includes the ring twiddle, the pencil sharpeners that you see, the knuckle cracks, all of those things. The pens are nothing worse than the pen. This is not a clicking pen, but the pen that clicks. I also am at that age where I need glasses when I'm reading. Oh, and I've got my glasses on. One of those classic examples where you can't find your glasses, but you see people twiddling the glasses. Don't fidget. If you don't need it, do not bring it upstage with you. The other thing is the big hand movements. So it's those bouncy hand movements that don't mean anything. They're not adding to what you're saying. In fact, they're kind of distracting to the visual learner as I do a karate chop in time with what I'm saying. Are you aware of what your hands are saying about you? Don't lock them away. Don't feel you've got to not use them. Do use them, but make sure that they're in line with what you're saying. They're congruent with the message that's coming out of your mouth. If you want to check your hand movements, stand in front of the mirror for 2 or 3 minutes. Practice a presentation. See what happens. Julia Gillard in her prime ministership had this thing of moving her hands like this. And in this particular article, she's talking about moving forward. I want you to move forward. And to many of us, that looks like pushing back or holding back as opposed to moving forward, coming forward. I don't know. It's just that the hands were a little bit too noisy and bouncy up and down. So Julia Gillard didn't always enjoy the support of the Australian people that perhaps she deserved. And one of it was around her nonverbal communication. The other thing that I remember strongly from Julia's nonverbal was she did a little bit of a chook. So that head bobbing up and down, which is nice, approachable, but if you want to become credible, then you need to keep your chin, the head still, and let people know that you're serious and the messages you're sharing. Yes, it's okay to bob up and down. Really glad you could make it. It's nice to be here today. But then when you move on to content, when you move on to structure, you want to become more credible. Head still. Giving no physical feedback or facial expressions. So this is kind of the deadpan. Good for humor, but not so good for public speaking. When you're presenting, you want an audience to give their expressions. It's how you learn. It's how you see whether they're with you or against you, whether they're falling asleep, whether they're excited, whether they need to go on a break. You as a speaker need to respond equally with the audience. So this deadpan, straight face, no emotions, reading off your text, off your script with a blank expression is one of the 10 mistakes that people make from a nonverbal communication. Even if you're dying inside, your outward facial expression has to show some excitement, some interest, some concern for the people in the room. Once again, it's about serving the people in the room, giving them some knowledge, some information so that they can move forward. Any questions at the moment? That's number 4 of 10. I'm going to have a drink. So thanks, Stephen. What if you're so nervous that you just don't have any control over your deadpan face? You're just focusing on your content. Look, I think with the nerves, if you can recognize that people don't see that level of nerves, or if you do keep a deadpan straight face, they're more likely to pick up your nerves. So in fact, doing the reverse, so smiling, letting people know you're happy to be here, is a way of faking your confidence. And I mentioned the TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. She talks about faking it till you become it. So I think just practicing in the mirror, smiling, and maybe nodding your head a little bit like Julia Gillard. And then when you get more confident, use more realistic non-verbal facial expressions will work. But the power of the smile, just turning up your lips straight away increases your endorphins and increases your serotonin. The endorphins raise your energy level. The endorphins just build up the amount of energy you've got. So smiling is also a way of creating a little high, a little energy burst within you, even though down in my tummy, I may be really nervous. There may be knots, there may be butterflies. So I think you can fake your smile without being inauthentic. You're inauthentic when your message and what you say, you don't really believe it. You're just going through the motions. So you can be authentic. You can fake your confidence and smile. Just smile. Thanks, Stephen. Good question. All right, let's move on. Eye contact. Really important. I'm not sure how well you can perceive the eye contact via webinar, but I'm speaking to the camera as I would speak to an audience. So it's about real eye contact. It's about connecting with the audience. It's about building rapport and trust through your eye contact. A really easy metaphor is, and we've got this young lady here with her eye contact, and clearly she's looking up at the roof, so I'm going to demonstrate that. Of course, the other one is down to the floor, and the other one is out the window to the audience out there. So it's just a used car salesman phenomena. I'm going to sell you a second-hand car. I'm going to look up to the roof and I'm going to ask you to trust me. It's a good car. Now I'm going to look to the floor. Look, I wouldn't lie to you. It's only had one owner, good service history. I'm going to look out the window now and yeah, look, it's a really good car. You're not going to buy off me. So if with your eye contact, you're not making genuine eye contact with the people in the room, you're just letting that opportunity to build trust and rapport go. Eye contact is also how you read your audience, whether they're getting tired, whether they don't agree with you, whether they need to take a break. So I think eye contact is a great way of connecting, building rapport, showing your authenticity, but also watching you in a room, falling asleep, nodding your head up and down in agreement, nodding your head left to right in disagreement. All of that I need to pick up with my eye contact. Eye contact, the sweet spot is about 3 seconds. So pick someone in the room, have a chat to them for 3 seconds, then move randomly to someone else. Less than 3 seconds is a little bit creepy. Less than 3 seconds is a little bit shifty. So you keep darting your eyes from one person to the next, not staying for too long, down here, down there, longer than 3 seconds, where you just pick out one individual and stare at them. That is creepy. So you've got that 2 to 3 second sweet spot. And I like to have real conversations with individuals in the room, even the big rooms, 150 people in the room. I'm going to talk to all of you one-on-one for about 2 to 3 seconds, then move to someone else. Eye contact, really important. You can tell when someone's uncomfortable or when someone's maybe avoiding the truth through their eye contact. For handshake, I like to arrive early at my training rooms, at my seminars, at my keynote presentations, and I like to be there. So as people walk into the room, as they arrive, I can do the handshake. This handshake allows me to connect and build rapport with the audience. One of the big mistakes is when you do a wet fish or an incongruous handshake. So the right thing to do, and I don't know that I can do it here, the right thing to do is to mirror and match the handshake that you receive. Someone goes firm, you go in firm. Someone drops their wrist, you drop your wrist. The mistake is when you take the handshake and you turn it over, so that becomes the dominating position. When you crush the hand, so someone gives you a soft handshake, usually a female, not always a female, and you crush the living daylights out of it. And the other one is when someone gives you a firm handshake and you just hand out the wet fish and people just don't connect. So your handshake needs to mirror and match, and it needs to be a good handshake, dwell for 2 or 3 seconds. You don't have to pump it up and down, but what I would do is match the handshake that I'm receiving from the person I'm meeting for the first time. I remember quite a few years ago when there was an election and John Howard was standing for another term and Mark Latham was the opposition leader, and they both were doing radio interviews, and Mark Latham was first. He came out of the interview and they met each other at the door. The cameras were rolling and Mark Latham grabbed poor little Johnny Howard's hand and absolutely crushed it and pumped it up and down, and you could see John Howard grimacing from the pain. And I think that was to dominate, to show who's bigger, who's stronger, who's in charge. As speakers, we don't want to do that. We want to connect, build rapport, and build trust with our audience. Do a nice mirror and matching handshake. All right. Nonverbals, I'm going to talk about voice. So there are those passive voices where clearly you don't want to be there. The passive voice, Australians have a bit of a upturn at the end of our sentence, and so we're really nice and approachable, but not all that credible. So sometimes we need a downturn at the end of our voice to build credibility and let people know that we're serious. The monotone voice with no rise and fall that just goes on and on. There are a few politicians that speak like this. Bernie Fraser, the ex-governor of the Reserve Bank, does a few adverts for superannuation funds, the superannuation fund of the future, and of course Sandman, the comedian, deliberately does a monotone voice as well. I have a rather monotone voice. I do not have that rich radio quality voice of intonation. So what I need to do is I need to pause, I need to change my pace, soften my volume, increase my volume to create a reasonable level of intonation. If you're excited, you need to let the voice, your voice needs to let people know that you're excited. If you think the message is important, your voice needs to emphasize that. The mistakes are when you're delivering an important message and your voice is just not conveying that level of urgency, that level of passion, that level of importance. And where your voice is not congruent with the words, people are less likely to buy your message. All right. Pause for a moment. Any questions at this stage? I'll go back to what we've covered. Oops. Poor posture, not being in sync with the audience, fidgeting and big hand movements, giving no physical feedback or facial expressions, lack of eye contact, the bad handshake, the wet fish or the crush, mismatched verbal and non-verbal messages. Any questions? So Sarah's asked, how do you know what sort of handshake you're going to receive from someone? And I guess it's about just being a little bit perceptive and just holding back just that millisecond so the handshake comes out from them. And then as you come in, you'll just kind of get the natural feel of what they're going to do. The angle, you can see the angle, but I also like to make eye contact. So it takes practice, it takes intuition, and you can slightly correct the handshake very quickly, very subtly without people knowing. It's not an exact science, but we connect when we match handshakes. There's a disconnect where there's a mismatch of handshakes. Thanks, Sarah. Not sure how well I answered that question. All right. So we need to go back to smiling. Let's see if I can get there. Bad handshake. Failing to smile. I mentioned a little bit about the biochemistry of the smile. As we smile, we get the serotonin and the endorphins going up. A smile is also infectious. So if you are to smile more, you'll get the audience to smile. Then their endorphins and their serotonin will go up. So all of a sudden you've got a more energized crowd. You can get people to smile, say after lunch, you're running a one-day seminar and it's the graveyard shift, everyone's eaten. Do something that involves smiling. Get people to smile. There's a whole school around laughter, yoga, and smile therapy. And something simple as taking a lead pencil or a biro. Now, this is just to illustrate. I'm not saying do it. And put this into a classroom of 10-year-old kids. Get each of them to put their pencil in their mouth, even though they're not mentally happy necessarily. The mere act of turning the corners of their lips up into a fake smile increases endorphins and serotonin. These are good chemicals. These are energy biochemicals. These people here, too serious, far too serious. Now, there will be serious parts within your presentation, I do understand. I don't want you to be the Cheshire cat that smiles for the whole 1 hour, for the whole 45 minutes of your presentation. But I want you to understand the power of smiling. And one of the mistakes that people make is they stand at the lectern, they don't want to be there, they're nervous, and they let people know, so they don't smile. They're very, very serious, and that just causes a disconnect. So use your smile. It's easy. The power of the smile. The eye rolling. Simon Cowell. This is a stock photo. Eye rolling is just one of those non-verbals that we should avoid. Eye rolling when you don't agree with someone is sometimes a little bit disrespectful. As a speaker, when someone asks you a question, always treat it with respect. If someone adds a comment, a different point of view, even if they do heckle you, so they're going at you time and time again, don't do the eye roll. Maintain eye contact. Use some of the verbal skills to shut people down. Set the rules up front saying, look, I'm here to talk about this. I'm not here to talk about that. So when this person keeps coming back with this off-topic question, the audience will give you permission to shut them down and say, look, Thanks for your question, Peter. But as I said in my introduction, I'm not here to talk about budget, money, finances. Sorry, can't help you. Shut them down without rolling your eyes as to, oh, here we go again. Here's another word I won't say. Here's another idiot. So don't do your eye rolling. It can get so bad that one of our shires, I'll just move forward. One of our shires in Perth, City of Melville, had to create a code of conduct for their councillors. So this is council meetings, 10 people sitting around the table. There's the CEO and probably one or two other paid staff, and the others are the elected councillors. And they had to put in a code of conduct because the behaviour, the non-verbal behaviour was so bad. And there was penalties for breaching the code of conduct. Outlaw behaviour including, so someone's speaking and this is what people would do: shoulder shrugging, rolling of eyes, deep breathing, pointing. You idiot, your fault. Do not point to your audience. This is another mistake. And I saw Malcolm Turnbull the other day. Point. You're wrong. You're wrong. This is very accusatory. And research around the world is showing that especially female audiences, women are sick and tired of men who stand up and speak. Do forgive me. That point while they're speaking. If I want to do a directional gesture, I would say, so you would probably know. What do you think over there? What do you think? I would not do the point. Donald Trump does a fair bit of pointing as well. People find it offensive. So just be aware that rolling the eyes along with other nonverbals is very distracting and very disrespectful and won't help you as a speaker or a facilitator or a trainer. The last one, number 10, is crossing the arms in defense as a speaker, or this one is kind of more aggressive as well. Now, please understand, if you're sitting before me and I'm speaking and you sit like this, I do not presume or assume that this means anything. The reality is this is a comfortable way of sitting. What I'm saying is you're now the public speaker, you're now the trainer, I'm now speaking to you through this webinar. Sitting like this for the majority of the time is perceived as being closed or defensive. Standing like this for the whole time of your presentation or for any length of time is seen as aggressive. So we need to be aware of our nonverbal communication. Is it aggressive? Is it passive? So the fig leaf is passive. Neutral is kind of hands by your belly button or hands by your side. As soon as you drop your hands down towards your crutch, that is passive. So don't cross your arms in defense or put your arms on your hips in that aggressive pose. Even though you may not be feeling aggressive, that's how the audience perceives it. I've mentioned the City of Melville. So there the 10 tips that I read in the Age article, and I've applied them to public speaking and presentation skills. Be aware of your posture. Try and be synchronized with the audience with your energy. Make sure your hand movements are clean. They're not fidgeting. You're not doing ring twiddles and playing with other, bangles or watches or other jewelry. Interact with your audience. Give them feedback the same as you like feedback. Make your eye contact real, engaging. Avoid the roof and the floor. Do a good mirror match handshake. Make sure that your verbal message and your non-verbal are congruent. I forgot to mention with this one that they did an electroencephalograph, EEG, in Stanford. And what they did was they had different cohorts and they had people telling the truth. Everything they said was the truth. One group of people told the truth with non-congruent verbal communication, and the other told the truth with congruent verbal communication. Even though they were telling the truth, when the non-verbal fell away, people didn't believe the verbal. So even if you've got the best message, you know it's on the money, and your body language doesn't line up with that message, you will miss out. You will miss out. Make sure that you have congruent body language, congruent with your gestures. What do I mean? I'm really happy to be here today. In fact, I'm thrilled to bits, which is the truth, but nobody believes me. Just wrapping up, workshops coming up in Melbourne. In fact, this one's in Shepparton, 17th of November on Friday. If you know of anyone, more workshops in Perth are all on the website. Upcoming webinars, 1st of December, how to connect and build rapport. And let's take eye contact a step further. The importance of eye contact when presenting, training, facilitating. Any further questions, feel free to email me. I wish to finish on time.